Hey everybody, this is Alex Merced, and welcome to the first episode of Web and Data interviews with, well, me, going on and interviewing people in web, in data, and talking about, web and data. So today I want to have a very good friend of mine, Joe Keohan, here to talk about sort of his career, to talk about boot camps, because both of us have kind of shared experiences as students of boot camps, as instructors of boot camps, and as developers. So we're going to hear what his story is and what wisdom can he share to those who are thinking about going down this path of being a developer. But with that, Joe, welcome to the show.
Oh, well, thanks for having me, Alex.
No problem.
Excited to be the first person to be interviewed. So this is awesome.
Yeah, no, this is gonna be a good time. Now, I guess let's start off with like, tell us a little bit about sort of like your journey to becoming a developer.
Wow. So I would say my journey started taking computer classes, an 8-month computer class back in 2000. So I learned all about Windows servers and desktop operating systems, and went to do desktop support, server support. SharePoint happened to be really big around that time also, and I was teaching, so I wanted to get into teaching the content as well. So I taught at a corporate training facility as well as some local schools while I was working full time as well. And as I picked up SharePoint, I started to pick up PowerShell. So it's Microsoft scripting language, and I was just really amazed at the ability to like create a SharePoint site and add things to the site just using the terminal. And as I was teaching Power SharePoint classes, people had questions, and I would go home that night and like solve it in PowerShell, and it just felt good to be able to automate something, right? So I eventually got a job working as a SharePoint admin, and I became the liaison between the developers that were adding functionality to the SharePoint site and the client to demo the functionality.
Let's
And okay,
pause there, just
sure.
because like my cousin, he actually works a lot with like SharePoint servers, so I'm not quite sure, like very familiar with this thing called SharePoint. So let's take a moment, like let's talk about what is SharePoint.
So as far as I remember SharePoint to be, because it's been a while since I've worked with it, we're talking like 7 years now. SharePoint was and is Microsoft's intranet website. So a company could have a entirely their own intranet sites where users could easily customize it. And so they could add folders and things to it, and lists and calendars. And it just gave a team access to shared resources. At the time I was teaching it, and a lot of people came in, and the SharePoint sites themselves weren't nice looking because you would have, an HR manager building the site. Would not, it was really just kind of a GUI. You drop it in, took a lot to style it. So there wasn't a lot of styling, but essentially that's what it was, an internet website.
Got it. Okay, thank you for that. Now, so basically, you're teaching people about SharePoint, and then what happens?
Yeah. So the more I was teaching SharePoint and working with it now too. So I was teaching simultaneously as I was working with SharePoint. I picked up the scripting. I started to get more and more into PowerShell scripting. I started to watch the developers really start to build the thing. Hey, we want a list, and we want the list when this thing is added to the list. We want this field to change color. We want this email to be sent. We want another list to be updated when a certain period of time spans. We want this to change. And I was really intrigued that the developers built this. And I think they were building it. I forgot what the language is. C++, no, C sharp, ASP. I don't know. I forgot
Probably
what they were using. Yeah.
probably one
Uh,
of those. But I mean, so just to kind of, so you're using PowerShell to like automate things on the SharePoint website. So basically, like one thing would happen, and then that would trigger a change in this intranet page.
well, I was doing some small PowerShell things and really also more towards teaching it. There wasn't a lot that I was automating on the job. I was really intrigued by the ability to do it. So any opportunity that I had to automate something, spin up a SharePoint site, like I could do that. If I wanted a new site on my own, I spin it up. Um, I didn't dive any further into PowerShell because then I saw the developers coding, and they weren't doing it in PowerShell, right? They were doing it in whatever the language they were building the backend sites with. I started to kind of dive into that just to understand it, and then I realized, man, this is just a lot. I don't think I'm going to understand this world of coding without getting some additional assistance. So that's when I quit my job, and then I went to GA back in 2014, end of 2014, graduated 2015. And it was from there that kind of started my career really as an instructor, because I was an instructor for 6 years, doing some side projects, but predominantly instructor. And until recently, 6 months now, a front end dev at Shopify.
Cool. And then tell us about sort of like that the journey to be a front end at Shopify. Like how was the process of sort of getting that spot, and how's it been since you've been in that spot? Like what are the sort of the oohs and ahs that you see in the halls of Shopify?
Okay. So let me take a step back, because I've been in the current role for
Mhm.
about 6 months, but I've been at Shopify for a year and 6 months. So when I was brought on board to Shopify, I was an onboarding facilitator. So they were in this mad rush to hire lots of devs, 2,000 devs for that year, or 2022 devs for that year. That was their goal. And they needed lots of, facilitators with technical backgrounds to kind of onboard all these developers. So at the time that I got the job at Shopify, I was also applying to other front end React specific roles and going on interviews. It just so happens, Shopify, I guess the interview process and everything just came so natural, because once again, you're an instructor, you teach. Presenting material was just so easy. I didn't even feel like I had to do much to kind of land the job. It just felt like it was a natural fit for me. So I had to make the decision: do I take this thing where I'm going to have to work for a year as a facilitator? I can't just join the team and then transition out. I was locked in for a year at least. Or do I continue to pursue other positions and keep interviewing? Right. So I decided to join Shopify and be the facilitator. And I looked at it as an opportunity to learn their tech stack. Right. I have to present things. And at the time that I came on board, I didn't know GraphQL. I knew of it, never touched it before, had no idea. We've taught Rails before. Their Rails environment, much more robust. There's so much more going on in their Rails environment. Their React is also, a lot more robust. React Native, which, yeah, I kind of played around with, but I never really built anything. We also introduced React Native. They have observability and monitoring tools that we have to introduce. So there was so much that I had to kind of get up to speed on just to introduce it and talk to it. And so that really helped me throughout the year, because now I'm learning all these techs. I'm meeting all the devs that are coming through, 20, 30 devs every month. I'm making connections with. And then I joined Shopify has a mentorship program for 6 weeks. You would be paired with a senior developer or higher who is looking to, help other developers in their career. And so I did 3 tracks of that, 3 subsequent mentorship programs, just because the opportunity was there. I kept putting my name in the list, thinking they're not going to accept me now because I've already done 2, and then I got a third one. I just did whatever I could, and each time, the first 2 mentorship programs are really what got me the job, because by the time I was in the third mentorship, I was already a front end developer. So they really helped me kind of hone my skill set and kind of apply, and because I had to apply for the job, so I had to go through 3 interviews, coding algorithm, build the thing, and another kind of discuss the thing and build the thing. And so I really apply my skills. It wasn't just like, hey, you're at Shopify, you got the job kind of thing.
Mhm.
And that's how I kind of got to where I am.
Got it. Okay. Well, now looking back on this journey, like if you were to talk to, um, someone who's like looking to either make a career change, or this is the path they want to go on from the beginning, like, and they assuming they don't know anything about HTML, CSS,
Oh
JavaScript,
boy.
you know, directory structures are a foreign concept. How would you advise that they get started? Like, what would they should they do to kind of like, if they're considering a boot camp or even just considering becoming a developer in any path?
Yeah, that's a good question. Um, I've always pushed the students too, and there's at some point in time they have to really kind of work with the technologies, feel the technologies, internalize them to make the decision whether they want to go front end or whether they want to go back end. So if you're brand new and you have no idea about development, then it's really worth your interest just to kind of explore a little bit of front end, explore a little back end, make the decision which way you want to go. Because I know full stack is great, but it does take a much longer time to become full stack, really good full stack, right? Really understand the front end and really understand the back end. I'm more of a like do the front end for a specific period of time. If you want to do back end or you want to do full stack, then transition over to back and like develop your skills so you have some really marketable skills too, right? So I would say, I'll just stay focused on front end. Say someone was just like, I want to build beautiful things, right? I like this, I like that. I would say build a beautiful thing. Like go watch some videos. Watch watch Alex's videos. Like there's a whole list of Alex's videos to go watch and just start working with the technology every day. Build something that I guess intrigues you, excites you, like you want to go do it every morning. But even if you're just exploring, you have to explore every day. There has to be a minimum of 15 minutes you give towards it to whatever length of time, an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, whatever it is. But you have to continuously do it if you really want to get into this feeling of like, oh, this is what I want to pursue. So yeah, I would say build the thing, whatever it is. And I'm a big kind of proponent of build the thing in multiple ways. Build the thing just in JavaScript and just JavaScript, HTML, and CSS. Then throw in maybe jQuery, to couple that. Then throw in React. Then throw in, Sass. Then throw in, style components or something. So you're kind of building the same thing, the same project, but using different technologies. So you're really grounded in the project and the functionality of the project. You know how it works and you know how things from one technology to another change. And it just gives you context. Solid context. Not that if you built a new project from scratch and used a different technology, would you not have context? Sure. I just feel like if you're building the same thing, you see the difference in that CSS. I built it just using CSS. I built the same CSS using Sass. I built it using style components, which isn't going to be much different. It's going to be more related to Sass anyway, but you kind of tie it in to something. So yeah, that's what I would suggest. And if it's algorithms too, if algorithms are, I don't know, a bit daunting for a lot of people. Like, do you need to know algorithms to land a job? Sure. And I'm only going to say sure. A lot of the students that we've interviewed during the fireside chats I do have said I didn't have to do an algorithm. Like at least the last 2, 3, even 4 students just said I didn't have to do an algorithm. So algorithms are great. Practice them to understand logical thinking, right? But build the thing because that's what people are going to say, right? They're going to know your skills, what you can do by the thing that you present to them.
Now, at the beginning, like we both had experience where we'll meet like new students, and sometimes there's things that you might think like, oh, okay, would have been not, certain things that you wish that students might know ahead of time. Like, what are the kind of like little building blocks? Like, you'd be like, okay, well, make sure you understand this before day one of your boot camp because it's going to make life much easier or much harder.
Yeah, I think everything from maybe the tools that you use, right? VS Code, Git, practice those, several weeks before you come in. If you're really making the decision to do development, and that's what you're going to commit to for the next 3 months if you're doing the full-time cohorts or 6 months if you're doing the part-time, if you're really committed to it, then it's in your best interest to kind of master the basics of the tools that we use, right? So really kind of be fluid in the terminal to some degree. I don't really spend a lot of time in the terminal besides running Git commands. I don't touch a lot of files. I don't make directories from there quite often. I do it from VS Code, but I know how to do it. But still, be a little bit fluid in there, because at times you're going to have to troubleshoot something that requires you understanding what the path statement is in the terminal, right? Learn about, when we're talking VS Code, learn some additional plugins, do some research on what are the 10 most used plugins. Try to learn to be efficient with the tools that you're going to be using. So when you do step into the class, at least the tool set you have kind of locked in. And then after that, it's just maybe learn the basics, right? The basics to the basics of HTML and CSS. I would even say if you're going to go take a 3-month boot camp and you're going to learn, maybe start with a Udemy course, right? Do a 2-4 hour Udemy course that works you through just the basics of things and build something. And that project is something you can add to your portfolio anyway, right? It's probably going to look nice if you're doing it through a Udemy tutorial, but you'll be able to at least understand the material at your own pace, because once you join the cohort, the pace is quite intense, right? There's a lot of material thrown at you in sequence that you don't understand, that you have to go through labs and homework just to kind of understand it, then work through a unit project to understand it better, right? And it's still a struggle to understand it even during the unit projects. And even when you complete, you still don't understand everything, right? And there's still so much left to understand. So the more you can do of the basics before you come in.
Yeah, ain't that the truth? No matter how long you do this, it always seems like there's more to understand.
Oh my God. I'm still 6 months in, Alex. I'm still drinking from the fire hose at Shopify. There's just material that's thrown at me that I don't understand. Code base is large. I don't understand what these other components are. Never saw them. Don't know what they're doing inside. Like,
No, I feel
it's a
yeah.
lot.
I feel yeah. On that, let's like talk a little bit about like some of these like new technologies that you've been getting familiar with yourself. More about like the technology, you don't have to tell us like specifically like how they work at Shopify, but like things like GraphQL. Like as you've gotten and used GraphQL more, sort of like how has like your views on it, like do you like seeing what like the value that it provides, and sort of like does it make your life easier or does it make your life harder in certain places?
Yeah, I would say I think GraphQL, there's complexity to GraphQL, right? So when we teach REST is, at least the way we teach, fairly easy, right? You create routes. Routes are then going to hit some sort of controller. The controller then manipulates the data through the model, right? That's the base level. At that point in time, things can get really complicated after that, right? Modules that help you do this or that. Um, I think with GraphQL outside of REST, GraphQL just comes with a lot more, right? It's a much more robust tool in what it offers. Things like caching, right? Caching is already available in GraphQL, and you can even turn on different variations of caching. Cache only, cache network. You can examine the cache in the Apollo tool, dev tools. So there's a lot that you can do with it. Creating the queries, I'm going to say, basic query, fairly easy to do, to actually create the code for the query versus making the query, right? I really see the power of GraphQL and the ability to request all the data that you need in one shot versus making a request, getting back data, finding the ID of the next thing that you want, making the request, getting back data, the ID of the next thing that you want, and you keep doing that, and that can be tedious to do after a while. That's a lot of like network calls too, right? You're making 3 network calls to get the aggregate of data that you want. With GraphQL, it's 1 network call. You make 1 call and you get it. You can still create little fragments of queries, so you don't need to have a 100-line query. You can create smaller queries and like reuse those queries elsewhere. The ability to, once again, just caching data. If separate queries are made from different components and they request the same type of data, it'll cache that data. And so it could even leverage the cache data versus making the additional query and getting it. So it does have that efficiency. But once again, with that comes I need to understand this thing, right? It's very complex. And it just requires that overhead of learning.
No, 100% agreed. Like I remember the first time I played around with that GraphQL. The thing that really like sold me on it is like how it like provides you with documentation without having to actually write documentation. So it's like, what does
Yeah.
this thing do? Okay, I mean, I don't know exactly what it does, but I know it takes in these arguments and returns this thing.
Yeah, yeah. And you still have to write, you
Mhm.
still have to write the description. So you are kind of writing the documentation because the better the descriptive text that you add to those functions, or to the queries, the more it's going to convey. But you're right. When you use that graphical tool, it just shows you what queries you can make, what properties this thing has, and what types of data they are, and you can query those types.
Got it. And then now that you've gotten down deeper down the Rails rabbit hole, how's it feel down the depths of the Rails rabbit hole? Because I mean, that's
Well,
like so huge.
Well, I'm on the front end, so I don't touch the Rails side of things
Mhm.
at this point in time. We have a backend team that's really responsible for Rails. I haven't touched. I touched Ruby code the other day. We were doing. They initiated like this kata program. So my team meets once a week, an hour and a half, and we break out to work through some code. And so they provided us some Ruby code that needed to be refactored. It's crazy if else statements, and you needed to make it more efficient and just easier to read. Maybe not more efficient, but easier to read. And it was all in Ruby. So I'm working with another developer that is a backend developer, so they know Ruby. So it was easy to like look at the code and understand it, but also the logic too. There was some logic I didn't really understand what's going on. Um, so I'm really on the front end. So my
Mhm.
skill set is just really React, GraphQL, TypeScript. That's the other thing that
Yes.
threw me for a curveball. It's like types and the errors that you get when things don't
Hmm.
match up. It's very frustrating.
TypeScript can be very love hate. Like it's lovely when it saves you from an error because you get those type hints,
Yeah,
but then it's frustrating when it's like that's not the right type. You're like, I'm sure it is. There isn't a type for this. That's not a thing. But yeah,
yeah,
I don't know. I feel that. I feel that.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, no. What are some things that um you've been diving into lately that's sort of like on your plate now, as far as things you kind of want to learn right now or are looking to learn in the near future?
Yeah, so I think I'm still, well, I'm still learning TypeScript and I'm still learning GraphQL, and so those two technologies are things that I want to continue to work through and learn. And I think I'm at the point now where I want to just build more side projects. So I signed up for front end mentors, and I've been working through a project, and just continuously adding. The project's already done, but the functionality is done. I could submit the project to front end mentors, and it would be fine. But I keep adding additional um, code to it, and in the process of me adding the code, I'm going through the formalized process that Shopify uses with pull requests, and I'm adding additional details and context, and I'm getting my colleagues to approve the PRs. And so I'm getting feedback from them. I just actually had one of my colleagues take a look at a PR that I put in for adding context and a reducer. Once again, I had to layer on TypeScript with that, so that took me some time. It's been a while since I've
Mhm.
had to actually add context and reducers. Like I know it, just took me a
Same.
while to add it. Teaching it once every few months versus doing it, and it's already set up at Shopify. I don't have to add context, right? It's already there. I really have to like know where the context is. It's already been consumed. I already have the data. So I just really kind of want to formalize my best practices, and start putting together projects that really convey my understanding of these tools. So the next thing I want to add to the project would be GraphQL. Right? I'm using a static data file, which is sufficient for the project, but I'd love to have a backend server where, a node backend server where I could add GraphQL and then make the queries and like really understand how to do that, right? Really how to understand how to make the queries, how to leverage the queries, how to leverage the cache, all of that in this project. And then, once I feel like I've understand these technologies and I've hit the end of there's nothing more to implement at this time for these projects, I can go to a new project and start utilizing, all those skills. Where when I set the project up this time, I know how to set it up because now there's a lot of refactor, right? I'm adding context and reducers after I've already enabled state. Like the app was already working and now I have to refactor it, which if I started from the beginning with context, I could have saved the time of not, setting it up in some basic way. I could have set it up this other way.
And then let's talk about like something you a love from the past. Tell us about like the times when you used to work a lot with like a D3 and what was it like handball? Um,
Street ball mecca.
there we go. Yes.
Street ball mecca. Yeah, I was really, I was looking for a niche. So, I always kind of convey to students too. It's find a niche, find something that really excites you and pursue it. And if you continuously, if you do it, you're really good at it. And if it becomes in demand, you could really position yourself, right? So I had really gotten into just data visualization and I was kind of pursuing that for a little while. And I picked up this project. It's called Streetball Mecca. I was helping a student in my React class, and they wanted to build some sort of dashboard for, I don't know, basketball courts in the city. And so we found a Tableau dashboard that had the data. And I was kind of familiar with Tableau. I had just played with it in the past. So I knew the data was there in an Excel spreadsheet. We could export it. I got him the data. We could take the data, import it into D3, and he was able to build the most basics of graphs. And then I thought, well, this could be that project I build too. Like I could maybe emulate this project and build it using just JavaScript, React. I think at the time it was just JavaScript, HTML, CSS, and D3, and just see if I can build it as close to the functionality that they had. And I got pretty close and even added a few additional features. And so that was just something I wrote a bunch of Medium articles on it because I wanted to convey to, I knew I was also doing this as a way to preface applying for jobs, right? So I have something out there that kind of indicates what I can do. Here's articles in sequence of how I built the thing. So I'm actually talking to the interviewer or the recruiter through my projects, right? They can see the level of detail I was trying to include. And yeah, so I took it, I kind of took it as far as I could. And I did try to find a job in D3. It's very niche, the positions for D3, not a lot of D3 jobs out there. And so, yeah, I didn't really find anything. So I just kind of went back to looking for any sort of React-based job. And then I landed Shopify. So yeah, but Streetball Maker was like my big thing. I even want to go back and rebuild it now with, React, the GraphQL, and, Tailwind, CSS.
Awesome, awesome. And now if people want to kind of like continue following your journey here on out, like where are the best places for them to do so?
For me to continue my journey from
Well,
here?
for them to follow your journey.
Oh, for them to follow my journey, I would say, yeah, I haven't been posting as much. I used to post on LinkedIn like almost every day, every other day. I had a Excel spreadsheet where I was really recording the LinkedIn posts that I was going to post and like making sure I posted them and drafted them. I haven't done a lot. So I think if anything, follow me on GitHub because I'm still building that project. I even had somebody out of the blue today saw that I posted an issue on my project, just some styling issue, and out of nowhere, someone said, "Can I work on this issue?" I was blown away that someone found me and decided to work on some basic styling issue, and they just submitted a PR.
That's
Uh,
awesome.
that really is
That never
amazing.
happens to me. No one wants to
Yeah.
contribute code.
Uh, and I found it amazing. It's the first time that it happened, but I really, I appreciate when somebody takes that level of effort, whatever it
Mhm.
is.
That's awesome.
So that's where they can find me. Outside of that, I'm not very active.
Cool. And so what's your GitHub handle?
Joe Keohan,
Okay, so
my first
JQhan.
initial last name. Yep.
Okay, and any last bits of advice before we call it a day?
Specific advice. Yeah, I'm all about just following your passion. Follow what really drives you. I've seen a lot of students succeed when they followed their passion. And yeah, do what you love. Spend time every day doing it too. Do the things you don't love that are going to get you the job too. Like, the world of development is not just I get to do this thing that I love doing all day. No, there's a lot of things that you have to do that aren't really going to be of interest. So you really need to figure out a way to do it. I would also say, and I wish I could go back in time to do this, pair with as many people as possible. Find time every day, every week to pair a program with someone else who's either at your skill set, higher degree, lesser degree, pair, share your knowledge, gain knowledge from someone else. But the pairing is really awesome in the ability to talk through code, speak to it, have conversations, share what you've learned, what they've learned. It's really amazing. That's one of my keys of success at Shopify. I made sure when I came on board, I scheduled pairing sessions all week, every day of the week, with one developer or two developers on my team, because I knew I needed the additional assistance. I need the context, and I kind of took ownership of if I'm going to be successful, I need them to pair with me. So I'm going to schedule the pairing sessions, and even if we don't have anything, we'll find something to pair on. So
That is fabulous advice. Well, Joe, thank you for being part of the first episode of Web and Data. And, always good to see you. And thank you very much.
thanks, Alex. Appreciate it. Good luck.